Okay.
Oh, 7. No, we do have 7. I'm sorry. We have 7, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, let's get started then. I will call this meeting of the September 6th Solid Waste Advisory Committee to order, and we'll take a quick roll call of members. And then Jeff, if you can run through staff and guests, that'd be great. But for members, Ed Kunkel, I see Ed here.
Present.
And Carolina Mejia is excused. Joe Downing. I do not see Joe. Lisa Parsley representing the city of Olympia. I don't see Lisa. And Joan Cathy representing the city of Tumwater. There is Joan. Good morning, Joan.
Good morning. It sounds like I have to represent all the cities and the county, huh?
You do. You are everything today.
I'm on it. Okay.
Joseph Richardson representing the city of Yelm. Is Joseph with us today? I'm not seeing Joseph either. Elaine Clan from the city of Tenino. I know I saw Elaine here earlier.
Yes, I'm here.
There she is. Very
Oh,
good.
you and me. I see.
Yeah. And Kirsten Presley from the town of Bucota. I
Good
thought I saw
morning.
Kirsten. Yeah, there she is. Awesome. And Richard Moon is here.
Yep.
Welcome, Richard. And Greg is here in the room with us. Greg Schoenbuckler. Chad Sutter. There's Chad. He's
Yeah.
getting in. Okay, great. David Nightingale is excused. Laura Busby. Thought I saw Laura. Yes, there she is from the Department of Ecology. And Jeff, can you introduce staff, please?
Sure, I'll start with myself, obviously. I'll start in the room with you there. We have Amanda Romero, our senior program manager. And Sherry Parsons, I believe, is in the room with you as well.
Yes.
Even though I can't quite see you, that's okay. As far as public works, I'm going down my list here. I see Danielle Winsky is available. There she is. I see Rob Putner.
Good morning.
Scott Keith.
Morning, everyone.
Oh, let me back up too. I see Joe Downing joined us.
Yes.
Okay. Who else have we got here? Let me just do a quick scan of the list. Okay. I think Corey Carlton from you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, hello, Master Recycler Composter Program, WC Extension 2.
And I don't think we have any other county staff that I'm missing, do we?
Did you get Danielle?
We did.
Okay.
Okay, then as far as other guests that are here to watch, we have Aaron Robertson. We go down here. Nick Harbert.
Good morning, everyone. Nick Harbert, WM.
Let's see, Pinky Vargas.
Morning, everybody. Pinky from Republic.
Let's see, Steve Gilmore.
Steve Gilmore, also with Republic.
I think. Did I miss? Oh, Tracy Bills, of course.
Hey there, Tracy with HDR. Nice to see everyone.
Did I miss anybody? Oh, excuse me, Richard Copeland from Republic Services.
Morning, folks.
Who will also be presenting today. So, all right. I think, is there anybody else I missed or did I get everybody?
Just want to make sure we acknowledge Joe Downing entered the Zoom conversation. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. And has everybody had a chance to take a look at the agenda for today? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say nay. We have an agenda. Have you had a chance to take a look at the minutes from our August 2nd meeting? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from August 2.
So move.
Move.
Thank you, Joan. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We have approved the minutes from August 2nd. I do not believe we have any public comment today. Is that correct, Jeff? No public comment?
Not that I'm aware of, but there are public members here if anybody would choose to. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand, so I guess not.
I'm not either. Yeah. Okay, thank you. No old business. Moving on to new business. We will hear from Richard Coupland from Republic Services regarding a recycling update. Richard.
Appreciate that. And let's see if I'm successful in sharing a screen. Does that come across okay for everyone?
It is beautiful.
Great. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the chance to spend a few minutes with you all and give you a sense for what's happening. I understand at one point your agenda was looking at one of my colleagues, Pete Keller, who I've worked with for over a decade now. He heads up our sustainability and our recycling for the organization. So I think the agenda had an update on recycling markets, which he could go into a whole dissertation on. I'll give you a little verbal update as to where things stand. And then I want to give you a sense for what's happening in the industry around you that's a little broader than recycling, but obviously all under the umbrella for sustainability. So starting with markets, I would say broad brush, big handprint, we continue to see commodity markets operate at what we refer to as below pre-China sword levels. And what I mean by that, if I was going to walk you through the continuum, when China exited the recycling markets and that threw things into a tailspin, we saw the value of commodities suppress well below, that late 2017, 2018 time period, just because there was a saturation of commodities looking for a home that were bouncing off of China at the time. With the exception of a short-term spike in 2021, which was the pandemic-driven demand for materials, we've seen that spike subside again, and we see overall values, especially the basket of commodities, operating somewhere probably in the 20 to I don't know, maybe 20-ish% below that pre-China sword level. It's on an upward trend right now, but as everyone says, if you could predict the future, none of us would be in this line of work. But we continue to monitor what's happening. So some of my remarks about what's happening in the industry around you are also driven by finding ways to continue to drive value as well as close the gap on some of that commodity, in particular plastics, which I'll touch on. So I'm going to run through a series of charts here to give you a sense, and then I'm happy to open it up for questions on the back end. A jumping off point, obviously from a Republic perspective, we've committed to some pretty heady sustainability goals with an objective of 2030 to meet those. And they fall under 4 key areas. Our people or our talent and safety are kind of the top 2. Safety being number 1 in terms of the industry and where we're headed. Talent in terms of keeping and attracting an engaged workforce. And then our climate action and our environmental responsibilities are really the core of what I'll talk about today. And then we finish with our commitments to communities in terms of leaving communities better off than when we first met in our partnerships as we go. Each of those have a very specific investment, very specific innovation or activity. And the reason I share these with folks is because as a leader in the industry, although we may be blazing the trail in some areas, that very quickly will be followed by others in the industry that can follow suit and benefit from the ability to leverage some of these breakthroughs that we talk about. So I won't go through great detail of the bullets on the right, but you will see several charts that will touch on them in the coming few. So first is continuing to harness landfill gas and biogas and using it to create energy in one form or another. I think everyone on the call is probably well familiar with the fact that landfills are putting off one of the highest methane emission aspects other than the cattle industry in the country, and the ability to harness that and do one of several things. Most kind of older school landfills are going to harness that and either flare it, or they're going to generate a turbine to create electrons right at the bottom of the hill through a partnership and a turbine that they have there. We have recently stepped into a $1 billion plus joint venture, originally with Archaea Energy, who was then acquired in December of last year by British Petroleum, to take what was originally 39 additional landfills in our portfolio. Now we're up to 40, and give them through a joint venture over to British Petroleum to then put the infrastructure to take that gas, scrub it, and then turn it into renewable natural gas and push it onto the grid for use downstream. That portfolio of 40, when it's completed, will generate enough renewable natural gas per year to power more than half of our fleet. We run the 5th largest fleet in America today. And although we have intentions to electrify our fleet, which I'll touch on in the next chart, we run a lot of RNG, especially on the West Coast today. And so the ability to contribute that gas back into a renewable form is certainly going to be very beneficial to creating circularity of this biogas from the landfill all the way back into the operation. So well on track. Many of those projects have started. A few others are in the engineering design phase, but a significant investment for the future across the country. Turning to fleet electrification, equally on track, if not ahead of plan. We continue to work with multiple manufacturers, so we have not just down selected to one. We work with at least 3 or more, where we are procuring their platforms, we are putting them on the street, we are running routes, and we're providing that feedback so that they can continue to innovate as they go. Most exciting is the photo in the upper right-hand corner. Earlier this year, we announced and unveiled with Oshkosh a frame-up design of an electric platform. And if you really saw this thing up close, it's fascinating. It's got a front windshield that looks like an RV. It has no doghouse, which is the big hump in the middle of a traditional vehicle for the engine underneath. So you've got about 30 or 40% more room in the cab. And it's got all of the safety bells and whistles for sensors and cameras and other technology. So we are working with Oshkosh to procure these trucks in addition to the other platforms that we're buying. And we'll start putting those on the street in the coming months now for the first few. There is an initial higher cost for these, but certainly on the West Coast, there's some great incentives that are available and coming online. And like any other technology, as time goes by, the affordability will get better, the performance will continue to improve and get better. And we will begin to weave these into our replacement truck inventory as we go. We're speaking with cities today that are interested in being first and leading in their markets. So if anyone on the call has that desire, I'd encourage you to reach out to the Republic municipal managers that are on today's call as well. But general pace of where we are today, we've got about 20 trucks in the country that are on operations, running routes. Over the next couple years, we've got another 150, 180 that are committed on order that are going to be hitting the streets. So you see a significant uptick. And by 2028, 50% of all new truck purchases at Republic will be EV. So that's indicative of our commitment and the fact that we see a significant benefit to our customers and to the planet of moving in this direction And it's obviously a way that we're going to make a meaningful impact in those sustainability goals I touched about on the first chart. Taking another shift to an exciting topic like plastics and really what we refer to as true circularity from the curb all the way back to the grocery shelf. Okay, for many years, we've made some really good progress in America by taking plastics and putting them to a beneficial reuse. But in many cases, that's what we would call downcycling. So that plastic would turn into a piece of lumber or a park bench or a piece of piping. And it would become something that really didn't have a next beneficial use. It would tend to go end of life in its next generation. On the left of this chart, you see a lot of recognizable brands that are consumer package companies that have made increasing commitments to their shareholders in order to have recycled content in their packages and their bottles. And the hard reality is there's nowhere in America for them to get that material in a form that's ready for production at the scale that they need it to make those percentage content goals. So we announced earlier last year that we were going to innovate and create a series of national polymer centers in America. There will be 4 in total. The first will open in December of this year in Las Vegas, and it will cover all of the material that comes out of our recycling centers and some third-party volume as well in the West. So you see this circle of life that will come to full fruition. From the curb, it'll go to a traditional recycling center where plastics will be separated largely the way they are today. And then those bales of PET, 1s, 2s, 5s, HDPE will make their way to the polymer center where we will flake them, wash them, treat them, and create a clean, very finely separated bag of material. It will then move to a new entity that we announced a month ago called Blue Polymers, and that's in partnership with a company called Ravago, who's one of the nation's largest polymer prep entities. And at Blue Polymer, we'll take those washed and flaked polymers and olefins, and we will create the production and food grade product that the packaged good manufacturers on the left side of the chart need for their line. The first flagship customer that's already announced and rolled out is Coca-Cola. They will be taking most of the material that we can put off in the initial rollout of the Vegas facility. And over the coming months, we will finish our negotiations and announce the location for the other 3 that will cover the rest of the recycling centers in America with the intent of scaling if needed in the future. So really exciting things happening here where for the first time, a partner municipality can be confident that a water bottle from the curb in their community can and will become another water bottle with true circularity and then complete the process as we go. Last chart are a few exciting other activities that are happening in the industry from a sustainability perspective. A ton happening with food waste and organics, starting in California with 1383. We are now almost done negotiating with all the cities that we serve in the state of California and starting new collection programs. And that's creating compost infrastructure. It's creating partnerships with existing water treatment facilities to take that organic material and turn it into better gas and better power, as well as digesters, including one that we've purchased in Northern California. That's the first anaerobic digester in our portfolio. Also very exciting, the last 2 key bullets on this chart. Last year, we invested a little over $2 billion in the acquisition of US Ecology and 2 other environmental service companies that specialize in hazardous materials, proper collection, transport, and disposal. And the intent is clear. We have customers who want to see all of the material that come out of the community properly managed. So that allows us to begin to step into HHW, household hazardous waste, electronics, universal, to include light bulbs and batteries, as well as medical sharps. And what you'll see from us in the near future are the creation of drop sites at our facilities, or could be our partner municipal facilities, where the community can conveniently bring and dispose of those hazardous materials that shouldn't sneak into the MSW container and onto the landfill, but also not be doing it on a Saturday once a quarter with 400 cars waiting in line and the chaos that comes from that. And then lastly, the on-call services to handle things that go sideways urgently, whether it's a train derailment, a highway tractor trailer accident, a spill in your city or your county. The photo on the bottom right was actually an oil event off of Huntington Beach, California, a few years ago that had an oil slick that impacted the entire West Coast all the way down to the coast of Florida from Huntington south. And all of those folks that are on the beach in the PPE, those were Republic Service employees that were out collecting the tar balls, properly bagging, and then making sure that they were disposed properly in a hazardous facility that was an emergency response to that spill. So that gives you a sense for the ability to establish these response agreements, almost like an insurance policy. If anything happened, you'd have the ability for us to respond and have people on site within 24 hours. So with that, I will pause for any questions that might have from the group. The QR code, if you're interested, is my contact information, and I'm more than happy to follow up with any interest or more detailed questions that we can't cover. Ed?
Ed, I think we saw your hand.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
No
Great
worries.
presentation. Thank you, Richard, for being here. So on the polymer centers that are being proposed, you said there are 4 of them nationally that will be utilized for the recycling plastics and whatnot. So residual effects of cleaning and removing contaminants and making the plastics marketable again. What happens with the contaminants? How do you deal with that? Does it get disposed of, or what? Can you tell me a little bit more about how that works?
Well, I can tell you that there's a team of folks that are handling that discussion. I can't walk you through exactly which residuals and how each is going to be handled. But I'm happy to get that information and push it back to you, Ed. But we do know, for example, when we go through the washing process, that the result of that process, that liquid needs to be properly handled, either recycled or disposed of properly. So the team is working through that. But you're right, this has never been done at scale like this. And so along with creating the equipment through partnership with the manufacturer, the way that we've set up the lines all the way down to how we handle the process and the residual from the process, that's all being innovated and worked on by the team.
I have a few follow-up questions regarding the purchasing and maintaining of EV trucks for the routes. How are we going to manage that? Because they'll need charging stations. I'm sure there's an exorbitant cost that comes with buying those kinds of trucks, and how is that going to affect consumers' bottom line? How is that going to affect their bill? And what is the lifespan of these EV trucks and the safety?
Yep. Yeah, no, all good questions. So yes, right now, as we stand, like any emerging technology, the platform, the truck itself, and the infrastructure to put the electric conduit and the charger into the yard, that side by side on day one is a higher cost than an RNG truck, or certainly a diesel truck in some parts of the country. But the life cycle or the maintenance profile over the life of the contract is more affordable. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. And in certain parts of the country, certain in the West, we see some nice incentives available that help offset that first day one increase. Is there a typical premium right now? Yes, but I would say it's tolerable. I think you'll find that it calculates to be somewhere in the range of a normal price increase on an annual basis in terms of a decision of stepping into that sustainability posture. And over time, I think you'll see the performance and the cost of that new technology become more affordable, which will start to bring the curves in line with each other. But we're already delivering and running trucks in several contracts that it's palatable for them to step in because they want to be first and their constituents are willing to pay that small price increase to get there. So overall, I can tell you it looks quite promising in terms of the operational benefit and the environmental benefit. And that's why we're leaning in as hard as we are.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
We have a question in the room from Greg.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. That's great. My question is also on the EV trucks. I have a couple of them. A couple of questions, not a couple of trucks, but are they a trade-off for diesel or CNG in terms of one-to-one for productivity? I mean, are you seeing these trucks being able to perform at the same levels and accomplish the same amount of route servicing as your diesels and your CNG?
Yeah, good question. And again, I think we want to think about where we are today with the emerging technology versus long term. The battery capabilities on these platforms today are such that we can run recycling routes primarily in flat to moderate terrain. So, you know, I'm running them in Boise, Idaho, for example, today. I'm not ready for Park City. And I'm able to handle recycling routes because they're lighter than a heavy MSW route. You also have some route dynamics that are in play, you know, how much windshield time to get to the route, how dense the collection is. So all of that is to say, you can't put a truck in every contract on every route in America today, but I'm highly confident when I think about my first cell phone that was in a bag and I plugged into the cigarette lighter in my car, compared to my current, you know, iPhone that can power a spaceship. The technology will get there, the battery capability and density will get there. And so we will track each individual route and whether the terrain and the density and the climate can be unlocked by performance over time. And so, you know, today we're running electric trucks in some routes of some contracts where a few years from now, I think you'll see them across the board. So hopefully that helps you.
No, that's great. Great explanation on that. I appreciate that. And then also you mentioned 50% of your fleet you're looking at converting over to electric. I'm assuming are you really looking just towards route trucks, or are you looking towards other vehicles like long haul vehicles, that kind of stuff? I guess that 50% figure, is that focused more on route trucks than your other types of trucks you have out on the road?
It is, and I want to make sure that that 50% number is understood. Every year, so, you know, starting, we have a 5th largest fleet in the country, call it 16,000 trucks or so. And every year there's certain quantities that are up for replacement and renewal. They're just normal end of life. And so by 2028 and moving toward 2030, we anticipate half of all of those new trucks that we purchase will be EV. So you're going to start to see us swap out an old RNG truck for an EV truck by that point where, you know, it's going to be very deliberate and conscious as part of our replacement program. Between now and then, it's going to be the early adopters, the municipalities that are eager to be first and viewed in that way, that will engage us and say, we'd like to have that conversation and we'd like to see some trucks, even if it's one in the downtown corridor that's highly visible, and then we'll step into it as we go.
Thanks, Richard. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is clarification around how many EVs you expect to convert to in the next couple of years. Ron had suggested 80 to 200. Is that an accurate number?
Yeah, we actually have orders in right now for 150 or more, which means we'll take possession of them over the coming years and begin to put them on pavement. Anyone should be familiar, regardless of the truck today, you're buying a build slot for a factory that's probably 18 months out anyway.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies when you're pushing the envelope with something new like this.
Yeah, okay. Second question from Ron is, what are CPGs? What does that stand for?
Consumer packaged goods manufacturers.
Oh, got it.
They're the people that are putting products on the grocery shelves in plastic packaging. And their shareholders are asking and demanding that they get more content. And anywhere there's demand, you're going to see investment and innovation like the Polymer Center. So that's something that we're always going to be watching for.
Great, and great segue to the next question from Laura, which is, where will the 4 polymer centers be located?
There's a line of people that is much longer than the folks on this call that are interested in us investing in their community. But naturally, if you look at a map without putting a pin on it, you can expect one somewhere in the Central South area, one on the East Coast for the East, and the one somewhere in the kind of the Central Great Lakes Midwest area. It's just a question of proximity to get this material from all of the recycling centers that are within reach into the facility. And for plastics, that's one of the lightest loads you can run. So you can actually move a trailer from Seattle, Washington to Vegas, and the numbers still work nicely. So that's where the Vegas facility, aside from the fact that we've got a pre-existing, pre-permitted facility there, that makes a lot of sense to be first.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for Richard or the Republic team that's here?
Richard Moon had his hand up.
Did Richard Moon have his hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, regarding your legacy diesel fleet, have you had any experience with biodiesel, and what were your views on biodiesel development for the future?
Yeah, Richard, I can only partially answer that. I am aware that parts of our team have evaluated it. I don't know the outcome and the position, so I'm happy to take that away and follow up with you. But I do know that we've been constantly looking for things that are more environmentally friendly, that are more efficient, that offer themselves benefit to the operation at scale, at a national scale like we run. But I don't know exactly where we landed with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions for Richard? I'm looking for hands and I'm not seeing any. So let me just say thank you, Richard, for that very thorough presentation. It was very informative. Thank you.
Wow.
And thanks to the Republic team for joining you here today. Jeff and I had occasion to spend a few minutes with the Board of County Commissioners a few weeks ago and heard a little bit about the transition that has occurred at the WARC and the Dropbox facilities, and just really want to thank Republic for your commitment to our community. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, pleasure to speak to you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for the partnership.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move to our next agenda item, which is a panel of folks. Scott Keith, Rob Pudner, and Danielle Winsky to provide an education and outreach update.
Also Corey will be
Oh,
part of that presentation.
and Corey. Okay, great.
All right, morning, everyone. The screen come through okay?
Scott, can you hold on 1 second?
Sure.
I think I see it. I didn't realize our camera was off, folks. I'm sorry. Corey just told me. I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready.
Right, good to go?
Yes,
Perfect. It's coming through okay?
yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Well, morning, everyone. I'm Scott Keith. I'm the Communication and Outreach Supervisor for Thurston County Public Works. And I get the benefit of just introducing the team. You'll hear from Rob, Danielle, and Corey today. And one thing I wanted to share was we are actively recruiting for our vacant position here for the Recycling and Waste Reduction Specialist 1. So if you have anybody that you think would be a good fit for the role, you can reach out to me, and my contact information will be at the end, or reach out through Jeff and Amanda, and we'll make sure to get the information over to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Okay, thank you, Scott. We've been busy this year, and so I will try to keep things pretty brief, but if you have any questions about any of the work that I mentioned, feel free to ask questions about it. We'll start with our mailers and publications. So we're excited to announce that we have started distributing bi-monthly billing inserts again. This is something that the county had success with for many years, but we had to hit pause back in 2016. And so this started back again with a January-February insert. Half of the LeMay customers receive an educational insert 1 month, and then the other half of customers receive the insert the second month. So this looks like roughly 36,000 print copies per cycle. And then there's additional 30,000 copies that are distributed by email. So 66,000 customers are receiving that. That's customers that we hadn't been reaching before this year. So that's great. We did also distribute a food and yard waste mailer this spring, and it is a follow-up to the recycle guide that we mailed out last summer or last May. It is designed in similar style. It has a magnet on the back, so it's easily mountable on an older refrigerator, not the newer ones. But we did target just the customers of LeMay who have food and yard waste curbside service. So that was about 25,000 households. And we did make an effort to include all of the residents of multifamily properties who have access to food and yard waste curbside subscription. So that's new for us as well, trying to get more information out to residents of those multifamily properties who wouldn't normally be considered a customer of LeMay. We've also translated additional publications of ours into Spanish. So we now have a Spanish translated version of our recycling guide, our food and yard waste guide, and our self-haul food and yard waste guide for the Waste and Recovery Center. Okay, next slide. With youth, we've been a little bit short-staffed, so we don't have as many events or as much youth outreach as we had in the past. But we did manage to have 2 tabling events this year. We had a display at the World Thinking Day, which was a Girl Scout event earlier. I think that was in February. And then we also had a display at the Billy Frank Jr. celebration. We did produce a spring edition of the Trash Talk newsletter that gets distributed to 4th and 5th graders. So that was just over 4,000 copies that we distributed to 134 classrooms at 24 schools. And so you can actually see in that spring issue, there's a copy of the recycling and the food and yard waste guide there. We've been providing some support for Pleasant Glade Elementary School in Lacey. They've been making big efforts to reduce their food waste in their lunchroom. There's a teacher there, Matthew Landers, who's been wonderful. He actually went through the Master Recycler Composter program. And so he's been dedicated to reducing waste, especially food waste at their school. So we're continuing to help them this year as well. Next slide. Providing facility support for our drop-off facilities. Through conversations with our Toll House staff, we learned that it would be helpful if our staff had access to a resource they can distribute to customers who have questions about electronics. If you look at our Where Do I Take My Data, electronics are still some of the top searched materials. So people are still unsure of what to do with their TVs, their computer monitors, their computers, their tablets and whatnot. So when customers come in and have questions, our Toll House staff can hand them a business card that lists the different materials that are accepted through the eCycle program for free. They have a phone number, a website, and a QR code that can lead them to more information about the program, where they can find a list of sites that they can find the one that's nearest them, where they can drop off those materials for free. And then the backside of that card helps prepare customers who need to dispose of that material on site at the Waste and Recovery Center, because there is that additional fee for televisions and computer monitors. They can be prepared to deal with that fee, and they can just know what those are, and maybe they'll be more motivated to find one of those alternative drop-off sites through the eCycle Washington program. We did try to streamline the publication process, the request process for our staff and partners. We have a new online form that allows our partners to see our full publication library, to see what's available to them. They can expand the files to see exactly what's included, so they know exactly what they can request, they know exactly what they'll be receiving, and they should be able to receive it much faster. We can reduce the back and forth time and get everyone what they need much faster. We are in the middle of equipping the facility recycling attendants from Republic with a copy of our publication libraries. So that middle image right there is a file box that has a lot of the publications that would be pertinent to conversations with customers at our sites. So each of the sites now has a storage box that's weatherproof, not that box there, but they have a place to store these materials so that when customers have questions, or sometimes customers like to debate things, they may not agree with what they're hearing, they can have access to these tools, and there's a phone number and an email address on these materials that they can follow up if they have any questions or concerns. And so far, when I went out to the Rochester site yesterday, it sounds like they're already being used. So I'll be distributing the Rainier box on Friday, and the Waste and Recovery Center attendant has theirs in their office. We also did update the signage because the recycling program did change slightly at the work. Now that the recycling bins are commingled instead of being completely source separated, we did update the freestanding signage, as you can see on the right. Okay, next slide. One of the big things that we've been working on this year is a study into the contamination at multifamily properties. We've known for a long time that people are confused. They find recycling confusing. And unfortunately, some of the elements in the system for recycling collection can add to that confusion. So this image that's on the left is a picture from an apartment complex where it is at a waste enclosure. These two carts are both for commingled recycling, and yet they both look different. One has a beige lid, one has a blue lid. That can be a little confusing to folks. And then the lid on the left has 3 different stickers on it. And then the bin on the right has a sticker, and then it's also hot stamped with some instructions as well. So what we wanted to do is see if we could find a way to reduce that confusion. So back in September or October of last year, we partnered with LeMay, and we came up with we designed a sticker that we could replace all of these other outdated stickers. So no longer would the sites have stickers that say, yes, please recycle aluminum foil or beverage cartons, which have been removed from the accepted materials list years ago. We would have an updated, correct acceptance list. We would separate out the materials spatially so that there was more room to identify exactly what materials were included. we would have images and text to identify the materials. So if you look at the sticker design on the right, it's got labels in both English and Spanish. And then we also have graphics that help identify some of the most common materials that are actually prohibited in the commingled recycling, such as plastic bags and film, clamshell containers, glass, food and beverage items, tanglers. And of course, we're trying to discourage people from bagging their items. These new stickers also include a phone number, a website, a QR code where people can access the Waste Wizard tool on LeMay's website. So if they have any further questions about what can or cannot go in the cart, they can find out more information that way. Okay. Next slide. So this study was 6 months. It ran from January through June. We had 5 different sites, including 1 control. So we had 4 sites that received the new sticker design, and then 1 we just left alone with whatever stickers they already had. Our goal was to determine, we recorded the overall contamination at each site down to each individual cart. And then we also identified what the makeup of that contamination was. So for each cart, we identified the top 5 contaminants, and then we put all of that information together to see what trends we saw throughout. And so in January, we recorded all of the data at all of the sites as the carts were, and then we swapped them out. So January was our baseline, and that we were comparing to all of the further months that we evaluated. This was a visual assessment. We did not weigh anything. We did not remove any materials from the carts, but we did assess the top 1 to 1.5 feet of the cart material that we could see. We used tongs to move things around safely if we needed to. And we were assisted by the Master Recycler Composter volunteers during each visit. During each visit, we had roughly 2 volunteers from the Master Recycler Composters, and this was a great opportunity to provide them with some practical application of the information that they learned during their trainings and what they read about. Now they actually had a chance to see real-life situations, and it gave us an opportunity to have some discussion and debate about what we saw, so it wasn't just one person's arbitrary idea of how much plastic film there was in that container. We could make sure that there was a consensus before we recorded the data. Okay, next slide. Scott?
It's not shown as the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So what did we find? After 6 months, we found that all carts still had contamination. We did not eliminate contamination with our new stickers. I wasn't really expecting that, but we did find that contamination went up across all sites, but it went up less at the sites that did receive the new sticker. And it went up less by 16.4%. Why it still went up across, I don't know. We don't have enough information to know exactly what else we could have done. We have suspicions, but it was promising to see that we did see a reduction compared to the control site. And then when we examined what the contaminants were at the control site and the test sites, we see that bagged recyclables were some of the top materials. The control site, almost 35% of the contaminants were materials that were bagged in paper or plastic. And then at the test sites, it was also materials that were bagged in paper and plastic. So we know what we can target, what kind of issues we're facing, and that gives us much more of an opportunity to combat that kind of contamination. Okay, next slide. So looking forward, there's a waste reduction and recycling education grant from Department of Ecology. We are looking at applying for that, and we would basically do an extension of this study and introduce a few other resources and tools, such as in the picture on the right, you see a sign on a waste enclosure wall, and that's from Pierce County. And so we could do something like signage at waste enclosures. We could provide reusable in-unit totes that would help target the bagging issue of materials, because at multifamily properties, people often have to transport their materials a distance. And so it makes sense that people are putting their materials inside of something and then they just want to leave it right there. So other communities have had success by providing reusable in-unit totes for tenants and reducing bagging that way. Also providing multifamily specific guides for residents of these properties and giving them information on, bulky materials and just what to do with materials that is, often there are challenges faced at those properties that single family residents don't have to deal with. So that is our plan. And then if we are unable to get that grant, we are still considering pursuing those kinds of tools, just on a smaller scale. We are just about ready to print the Trash Talk newsletter for the fall. And as part of that, we are actually launching a contest among the 4th and 5th grade students that receive that to rename the newsletter, because it's been confusing for a while to have a newsletter called Trash Talk, and then we've had a publication and a video series called Talking Trash. So it's the same 2 words, just in reverse order. And we'll be launching a contest to come up with a name to give each of our resources their own space and let them be understood. So we'll be announcing the winner of that on America Recycles Day, November 15th. And our senior program manager has done a great job of helping us, helping lead some annual planning for 2024, so we can really have a good idea of what our team will be working on in the coming year.
All right.
Just so you know, Laura dropped in the link for the waste reduction and recycling education grant in the chat. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, we'll turn it over to Danielle. She'll let you know what. Oh,
could I just ask a quick question of Rob? I was wondering if he sees in all of these studies any signs of active resistance to recycling, and if so, if there's any way to try and turn that around.
Active resistance from the residents or from a property?
Just in general, for lack of a better word, sabotage of recycling efforts,
Gotcha.
Among, people just not only throwing, actively throwing things in, but even actively overturning recycling bins, or various signs like that, kind of like the idea of throwing electric scooters in the river and bay, stuff like that. Any of that kind of stuff showing up in your studies?
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate the explanation. It took me a moment to think back over the 6 months of data that we had collected. And, one of the things I kept coming back to as we lifted lids and sorted through it was, you can really tell that people are trying to do it correctly. They're trying to do their best. That was my takeaway every time we went out there. Occasionally you'd find a bag of something that was obviously garbage. You'd find some bathroom trash with some, people were cleaning their ears, and you've got some dental floss and whatnot, but it was very rare. Once in a while you find kitty litter, you find some vacuum bag debris, but most of the time it's clearly material that is either accepted in other communities for recycling, or it's material that used to be accepted for recycling here or somewhere else. It was pretty clear to me that people genuinely thought that those materials were recyclable. So even if they were never recyclable here, you can kind of see the line of thinking based on the context of the contents of that bin. So I would say no, I haven't seen anyone trying to actively resist or sabotage the recycling stream. And that was very promising, even on days that we were very frustrated by what we saw. And even if the numbers look like the contamination was very high, it was still promising to see that people were trying. And so I think there's a lot of potential if people just had more access to the correct information. So if we expanded our efforts and we provided them the information and the tools that they need to do it correctly.
Great, that's great to hear. Thanks, Rob.
Sure.
All right, Danielle.
Good morning, everybody. So some of the projects I have gone over in the last 6 months, I will be sharing with you all. Starting with the first project I was tasked with as I came on board, which was updating a lot of the signs at the Waste and Recovery Center. The old signs, a lot of them were outdated, incorrect information, or damaged from the high winds that are on the property. And so I set forward to create new signs that were a little bit more clear to understand, had the most updated information, and feature a new modern sign that's more in line with some of the other municipalities and what they have at their sites. Overall, I feel like this was a really great success for my first project with the county. The biggest hurdle in this project was, I believe, the Hazo House. It's a really large sign with a lot of information, and being able to accurately present that information in a way that's easily consumable by visitors presented a unique challenge, because there's limits on what's accepted and what's not accepted. So overall, I feel like it's a great tool that the community can now have access to, and while they weave their way around the work. Next slide. The other big project that I have been working on in my time here has been with the Organics Management Law. I know last month there was a presentation from Laura, I believe, on what the Organics Management Law is and how it's going to affect, from a statewide level, businesses over the next few years. Thurston County is the only county in the state where the full county is required to participate in this program for the coming year of 2024. So I have been working hard with some key partners, such as the City of Olympia and LeMay, to establish key messaging. How can we all work together to benefit the goals of this law, and making sure that we're all on the same page. I am also part of the state's organic management stakeholders group, which will have decisions, or it will help form policies for the future of the organics management law. And I'm representing Thurston County in that group. And then I have also been creating multiple pieces of educational materials that I'll be taking out to businesses that we identify as potential businesses that meet the 8 cubic yards per week of organic solid waste or organic waste in their streams. Some of the materials I've created is a web page dedicated to the information, along with the timeline of the rollout of the different levels of requirements. I've created a postcard that we will be sending to identified businesses, letting them know that there's a new law going into effect that they may be impacted by. I have also used the focus sheet provided by the state to update it with further information on where businesses can, the options that businesses have to dispose of or divert the organic materials that they have on their sites. And then further, I have started actually processing and creating materials that I'll be able to use and assist businesses with as I go and meet with them to assist and assess their their organics management flow, if they meet the requirements, when they will meet the requirements, and just creating those and establishing those relationships with businesses, because eventually they will all be impacted. And I just want to make sure that we are seen as a go-to source and a place of help to get them up and running successfully. Next slide. So moving forward, at this time, it doesn't look like the waste reduction recycling education grant is going to be something that I will need for the 2024-2025 cycle, but I will be participating and helping with that to identify ways we can use it in the following cycle after that for the organics management plan. Again, I'll be sending out postcards and contacting businesses directly to start establishing relationships, even if they don't meet the 2024 requirements. We know that eventually they will, and I want to start those conversations early versus last minute, so they're highly prepared and ready to go. Scheduling on-site assessments with those businesses and providing technical assistance such as logistics. How are they going to manage and set up internally their organic system? How are they going to get the organics from inside their offices to outside? What it will look like logistically, and helping them understand the impacts to their business. Beyond the organics management law, I am also working in line with our solid waste management plan to reestablish and develop a whole new commercial recycling and waste reduction commercial program. It's something that has not been done in quite a few years. So I'm really excited to get started and not only provide organics outreach and assistance, but overall, how can we improve business and commercial recycling and improve their waste reduction efforts. Next slide. The other big undertaking I have done so far is with social media. When I came on board, I started with developing a brand new social media strategy. And that consisted of doing a lot of research on what other counties are doing, where they're at, their audience, the type of posts that they provide, and comparing it to what we've been doing up until that point. One of the things that has come from that is posting on a more regular schedule, and really fine-tuning the types of posts that are being seen, and making sure that all the programs that we provide for recycling and waste reduction is highlighted at some point throughout each month. Since I took over this project, as of August 18th, the Facebook reach was up 70%. So it reached on average 5,820 people. That was a huge increase in the number of people who are seeing our posts. On Twitter, which is the other social media account that Solid Waste manages, there was a 30% increase for 2,600 people who are averaging views. So again, that's another pretty dramatic increase, especially on a platform that's very fast moving, and it's harder to get your content seen by your followers. So overall, it's been a very successful run, and I'm continuing to monitor and make adjustments. Next slide. So again, I really want social media to be a tool that people can go to build trust and credibility with our residents in the county, and be the go-to source where they can find the most relevant information, not just about general recycling and waste reduction efforts, but about our Borrow a Bin program, the Where Do I Take My program, business, our youth, our residential multifamily, as well as some state initiatives such as the bag, Keep Your Recyclables free from bag campaign that was going on in the litter campaign from Ecology. So it's really an opportunity to build partnerships with the state level as well as with our community and residents. Next slide. So another project I have been working on is updating our Where Do I Take My tool. Since coming on board, this has been a really useful tool I've noticed for our community to use to understand where they could take items to recycle, to dispose of, to reuse as well. And looking into it, the last major update and review of the system was in 2021, and there wasn't exactly a clear process in place on how to update the system. So I have worked to develop a procedure to maintain and update it. This includes real-time updates that happen as users submit requests to have changes done, as well as internal staff. Quarterly checks that are done to make sure those updates are actually happening, as well as a full annual review where we contact each location to make sure that the information we have on the system is truly accurate to what they accept. In order for me to do this, it started with having to manually build a database in Excel. Unfortunately, the software company that provides this tool, they do not offer the report that is needed to make sure that we can do an accurate annual update each year. So I have built that, and with the help of MRC volunteers, I have gone through the initial annual review process where I separated out to each of the volunteers a set of locations that they were to contact and verify the information on our site. I received that information back now, and I am working on the next steps to get the information updated so that our residents have the most accurate information available to them. Next slide. So, as I said, we're moving forward with the review and complete update of the requests. I have an automated system set up already on the back end for users to submit requests to. And then in October will be our first partial quarterly check, with the next annual review in April of 2024. And each annual review and quarterly check, we will be asking for assistance from the MRC volunteers to give them an opportunity to get more involved with the community and with the locations that provide recycling opportunities. And next. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Corey, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, hello, everyone. Again, my name is Corey Carlton. I am the program manager for the Master Recycler Composter Program. I am a county employee, but I am housed in Washington State University Extension Office, which is at the fairgrounds, just because my job is split between the Master Gardeners and the Master Recycler Composter volunteers. So both of those entities, so I'm going to focus on the Master Recycler Composter program activities right now. This last quarter, I would say our number one thing that we focused on was outreach. And so our current question and answer clinics online, we both do online and in person, as the slide is indicating there. Second quarter, we had 6,349 resident inquiries asking questions about recycling, waste reduction, composting specifically. And they were split between online inquiries, but most of them were the in-person events. And that's where the Master Recycler Composter volunteers really focus on, is that what are the residents asking in a face-to-face interaction. And so we track all of the questions that they ask as well. And so that's part of our year-end reports as well. And so our composting workshops, we also offer them monthly. Our Master Recycler Composter volunteers actually present those workshops. They are scheduled. We start in March online, and then we move into in-person once the weather gets nicer, starting in April and go through October. So we currently, in second quarter, we had 9 workshops, 340 people attended those. Our community outreach events, this is just a sampling of some of the events that we go to. Each week we have multiple events scheduled throughout the county. These were some of our larger, highly attended events where literally each of those were thousands of people that we contacted during those events over those days. So next slide. As far as our actual volunteer activities, I overall supervise 225 active volunteers. 45 are master recycler composters and 180 master gardener volunteers. With each of these volunteer programs, it's not your traditional volunteer program where you might see that volunteer once or twice a year. These are volunteers that have set volunteer expectations, meaning the fact that they have required volunteer service hours to keep their certification. There is a lengthy training process that they have to go through in order to become a certified volunteer and then maintain that certification. So with that part of their certification, they also are required to do continuing education opportunities. And so that's part of our responsibilities to provide some of those opportunities for continuing education in the form of monthly cafes. So last night we had our monthly, it's on the first Tuesday of every month, we meet in person and we go over updates. What things are happening in the industry, what kind of questions did they get at this event that they had questions about. So it's a way for me to check in with them in a face-to-face person avenue, as well as our Zoom check-ins, which also happen on a monthly basis. Those are both for master gardeners and for master recycler composters, where the monthly cafes for MRCs are just MRCs only. And so last night, yeah, it was a full discussion about all kinds of things that they had questions about. And then also I had shared with them some upcoming continuing education opportunities, which is also a requirement, like I said, to keep their certification. And so on that next part is the demonstration gardens. For those that aren't aware, we have 3 public demonstration garden spaces throughout the county. Our largest is at Closed Loop Park, which is at the Waste and Recovery Center right next to the dog park. And all of our gardens have been in existence over 30 years now. So our second one is at the Olympia Farmers Market Garden, which is again a small garden right directly adjacent to the market itself. And then our Dirtworks Garden is in Yager Park, and that's again our partnership with City of Olympia within that property. So each of those public gardens require a lot of volunteer because it's all of the work that is done there is done by volunteers or in conjunction with the landowner for additional support as needed with some of the infrastructure stuff. But most of that is, again, the general daily maintenance and all of that is all done by volunteers. So these public spaces, we use them to teach our workshops in, but also to demonstrate best practices. And so that's where our composting workshops are held there so they can actually see that process. Right now, there are throughout the summertime, and that there's a minimum of 7 work parties happening at each of these gardens each week. And so that again requires a lot of volunteer coordination just to make sure that these spaces are updated and maintained as well. And then the other important part for this last quarter was helping with again the solid waste projects. So that's as you just heard about. So just wanted to review that. The one thing we're gearing up for right now, next slide, is our master recycler composter new volunteer training. We did extend the deadline there. We had some issues with our Facebook ad being charged multiple times, was ended up shutting, alerting our credit cards. The card got actually shut down as we had to thankfully work with our solid waste partners to try to get our ad up. Since that ad was posted, then we've got more applications now. So currently we're standing at 15. On average, our normal class size is 20 to 25. So we're a little behind that. But again, right now, since the ad's been going, we've received more applications there. So that is historically, again, I've been in this position 15 years. I kind of know social media is one way to extend our way, and that's our primary way of getting in front of folks. And so when the ad wasn't running, it was very frustrating, and there was a bunch of alternative thinking as far as how we could actually get that out there. So I'm thankful for that support, and we're able to again hopefully get some numbers here over the next week here. No matter what, we are starting, since we have enough in order to start the class. That'll be on September 15th. That'll go through November 9th there. It is a weekly class, Thursday evenings, as well as a Saturday field trips. And all of that is in person except for one of the sessions, which is on Zoom. So it is an opportunity to train the volunteers. Everything and the presenters are either solid waste staff Department of Ecology staff, other stakeholders that are part of the training process that they would be actually be out and serving with. So we train them on what they need to know, the basic knowledge there, but then also how to actually volunteer and serve and what the requirements are during that process. So that's what we're going to be focusing in on for the next few months here, just starting in a few weeks. And then our last slide for me is our upcoming activities. We're rounding out our monthly composting workshops. We have 2 this weekend. So this weekend we are at our Dirtworks Garden. At 10 o'clock, we're going to be doing yard and food waste. And 11 o'clock, we're doing worms. And so that'll be a public workshop. Anybody's welcome and invited to attend there. And so that'll be our last in-person one. So our October workshop is on Zoom from there. So that'll be our last of the monthly composting workshops there that we've been doing. And they've been well attended. I think people prefer the in-person ones just because they can actually see the process there. And especially when you're working with compost, to make sure you got the right ratios in that, it's very helpful to actually see it from there. Our next one are community events. We're rounding our children's garden program. Our last topic is Wonderful Worms on September 19th. And that's just because we need to put the worms to bed for winter. And so that's one of the ones where we actually have a lot of homeschool groups participate because it is on a Tuesday in September. A lot of kids are back in school, but the worms don't really care about that schedule. So in that case, they need to still be put to bed. And so the homeschool groups come in and help out with that. And we do have a few that actually get taken out of school that morning just so that we can round out the children's garden program, and then they'll go back to school afterwards, because the children's garden program is definitely a following, and the fact that they've been coming to the garden and then they didn't want to miss the last class, even though they were technically supposed to be in school, is one of those things. So MRCs are going to be teaching that class and helping put the worms to bed for the winter. And then the other thing is kind of a joint project. It kind of started on the Master Gardener side of things, but it definitely involves the MRCs, and I wanted to make sure you're aware of it. So starting on September 30th through October 31st, Shilters Farm, which is again located right in the Nisqually Valley there, right along I-5 there, 5th generation farm. They contacted us back in June about partnering because the Master Gardener program turns 50 this year. And there's a lot of connections with WSU faculty and staff that have helped them over the years with their farm, but also they're also Coop grads, and also some friends with Master Gardeners as well. So what they have proposed to us is that, and we worked on this design that you're seeing on the screen there, that is actually the corn maze. And they are going to be cutting their corn maze in the shape of Washington there in recognition for Washington State University's Master Gardener program, the 50th anniversary. So within the petals there in the center, right around the 50, each of those are going to have a different container garden where the guests can actually vote on different themed kind of container gardens there. Well, one of them is going to be MRCs, and it's all going to be upcycled. So everything that we use in that display will be upcycled materials from there. So they'll be able to have a chance to vote for that. And then if you make it way out, there'll be more information about how to connect with our programs there. So,
and if you don't make it out,
you probably can spend the night out there. Yeah, so
can we be put to bed with the worms? I don't know.
Correct. Yes. So it's going to be exciting. It is a joint, again, a partnership, just because a lot of our volunteers are both Master Gardeners and Master Recycler Composter volunteers. They are both in both programs. And so this is a way that we can connect together, but also share the messaging there. And then also along the pathways are also little tidbits and facts, and that some of those are, again, upcycling waste reduction facts along the way from there. So it's a unique partnership. And if you're, again, looking for sort of fall fun, I encourage you to go out there and support the MRCs and MGs. They will have booths scheduled throughout the month at certain days where we'll have our volunteer staffing question and answer booths out there as well.
Very nice.
So two last things, community covered in the kitchen help. So we're working with the city of Tumwater specifically, and you can see on the lower left corner there is one of the food cupboards there that the MRC worked with, again, leadership from city of Tumwater. And these are, again, food cupboards where right now the MRC volunteers, as well as others from the site locations, are putting in extra food. And anyone from the community can go to those cupboards and as a way to use that food so that it doesn't go to waste. And so they worked with to actually design these, and then work with local schools in order to get them built, and then from there are in full operation. So that's kind of an exciting process. And our last one is our demo garden work parties. We'll be wrapping those up here in November. But in the meantime, we got a grant in order to put in some new kiosks, specifically the one at Closed Loop there in honor of its 25th anniversary back in 2019, we got the kiosk redone. But we now need to get the signage, and now we have these display cases that with this grant we'll be installing before November.
Great.
And that's it.
Thank you. That was a great report, Scott and team. Thank you. Do we have any questions before we move on?
Just one big comment.
Yeah, great.
I thought it was great, all of it.
It was.
You guys are like doing a ton.
You
And
are.
it's so good to see. I'm so happy to see all the activity. I did want to mention on Danielle's presentation, I really appreciate the forward thinking of talking to the folks that will not be fall under the food waste, mandatory food waste recycling 8-yard threshold initially, but starting the conversation before that happens, that's really wise. I think it's great to blanket it because it's gonna hit everybody, you know, and so getting in touch with all of them now is very wise.
And I'll just add to that, I've seen the new signage, which is looking great. Thanks to Danielle and the whole team for making that happen. Do we have any questions or comments before we move on?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Joan.
Renee, you and I have been here a long time, and
We have.
we have talked about programs like this. I'm just overwhelmed and grateful and gleeful at this report. And what's happening in our outreach and getting people involved, kids involved, master guide, the whole thing. You know, I kept catching my breath because one more. So I just want to say thank you to anybody and everybody, probably from the top down, you know, getting funding and hiring great people and putting this whole thing together, because you can see people need education and they're actually excited to get it, and I think that people want to learn more, and we're there and ready to go now. So I love it. It's been worth the wait.
I agree with that, Joan. I think it's been about 8 years since you and I started talking about these things. And I just kept smiling during this entire report.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of really wonderful work going on around education and outreach, and just want to thank the team for being with us this morning. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else before we hear from Jeff? What is the best contact information to invite master recyclers to a community event? That is a great question.
You can just email it at master@co.thurston.wa.us. We can type it in the chat.
Why don't you put it in the chat for us?
Oh, we're gonna put it in the chat. Technology is a beautiful thing. Any other comments or questions before we move on? And there it is, appearing in the chat right now. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate that. And really, I'm serious when I say I appreciate this presentation today. And with that, Jeff, you are up.
Okay, well, I only have a few minutes, and then I haven't got to jump off at 11:30 for another meeting. But my first one and most important is, okay, you heard, you know, the presentation that they just finished with. I think you probably caught during Rob's piece of the presentation about, you know, our limited ability to get youth outreach from what we used to. So I wanted to let you know that in this upcoming budget request to the Board of County Commissioners for our next coming biennium for 2024-2025, we've actually made a request to add 2 new positions, education and outreach positions. One would be an education and outreach assistant 2, which is the same level as Rob and Danielle. That would be specifically targeted for youth education. So they would actually more or less be full-time in getting into the schools and working, and so you could really, because that part has really fallen off over the last number of years to getting in there. And then be an education and outreach assistant 1, which would be a support person for that individual. So those 2 would really be focusing their energies and getting out into youth education, really getting into the classrooms again, because that's between the demands, you know, as far as all the programs that we have, and then the lack of staff for a while. So we're making that request to the Board of County Commissioners to add these new positions. additionally, it's a slightly different slant, is we're also asking the board for a new position in our litter pickup program. As you probably know, we have one FTE, full-time employee, that operates that program, and during half of the year we have a seasonal that works with him. So again, the litters continue to get worse. Just more and more, and so we were requesting to add a regular full-time assistant to our full-time litter program person. So what I'm asking is, so these would be requests to the Board of County Commissioners for the upcoming budget, is whether this committee would support having our chair write a letter of support to the county commissioners supporting our request that these positions be added to our programs. I know there's been in other divisions that are looking for new positions as well, where they've had their advisory council has provided letters of support for that request. So so if we were to say approve that, or this concept, we would have your chair would basically sign a letter to the Board of County Commissioners with this letter of support, and we would draft that letter. But I wanted to get the full committee's perspective on that and approval on whether they felt that was something that they would support as a whole group. So with that, open that up for discussion.
Yes, Ed.
So Jeff, how critical is that request? I mean, we're talking about local tax-paying dollars here, adding to the budget. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more for those of us that might be a little skeptical on it.
Sure, fine. The first piece is, of course, we are not a tax funded program. It's just it's user fees. So we're all from the solid waste tipping fees. So we don't receive general fund dollars. Right now, we have 4 major programs for waste reduction and recycling education. Again, with just 2 individuals, the level of effort that they can put out there right now is minimal, especially going into schools, because I'll give a little bit of perspective. In my previous position with Marion County, we actually funded a regular full-time teacher. We funded it, but it was actually a school district employee. And there's, at that one full-time person, you can basically have 1 or 2 grades. You focus on a certain grades, like 4 or 5, for example, and you have maybe you can get into each of those classes around with maybe twice. And you need to be able to have multiple contacts, because this kid's hearing something once doesn't necessarily sink in, so you need to get multiple contacts. So to get that level,
kids hearing things 3 or 4 times doesn't always sink in.
Well, agreed.
For those of us who have children, you can understand that, yeah.
And where that pays back, with the childhood education, is they learn it. They put the peer pressure on their parents. They go back, when they're like, "Dad, why are you throwing that away? And why aren't you recycling that?" So, but that
Jeff, can I
easily
share
absorbs that level of
one
staff
thing
to get that level of effort.
Sure, Jeff, the concern that I have is, we're making some significant changes that are going to have an impact on the consumer's rates. And, so adding one more thing, I mean, I don't know. I appreciate where you're coming from. I personally, I don't think it's critically important to add staff to this program at this time, maybe down in the future. But the cost of shifting to EVs, the cost of changing up how we do things at the wharf, all those things are going to affect the consumer's rates. And so I don't know, that's just my 2 cents worth.
Others?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Jill.
Thank you. I think this is absolutely critical. We're talking about the planet here. We're talking about education. We're talking about young people who are going to either continue to do things that are, you know, not the best way to live sustainably, but they're able to, if they're able to learn, if it was just a 4th and 5th grade class or whatever it is, this is critical education for young people because they are going to carry the future. And as we know, sitting here right now, the future is in danger. And this particular kind of program, teaching it to kids, makes a huge difference in what we need to do and why, you know, we're so excited about trash getting in the right places and all kinds of things. Anyway, we had this program when I first started on this committee, and it made a difference. I visited some of the classes, and and being an old teacher myself, I mean old in terms of years ago, but it and kids drive this, and they drive their parents. They take them to some of these demonstrations, and some of these kids end up as gardeners and so forth. So I am just wholeheartedly for us asking for these positions, and I think they're very defensible in the midst of all the other things that we're doing. We're not jumping into some of these other, you know, big things. We're right at the moment, but this is critical stuff. So anyway, I would be wholeheartedly behind this.
Steve.
Yeah, so here's what I would say. I mean, I totally understand Ed's perspective in terms of rates and concerns about, you know, future rates, but every community that we've actually invested in education, in the long run, those rates actually go down because contamination goes down, costs go down. So yes, there is a front end cost associated with educators, but the long-term benefit is actually far exceeds the front end costs.
Ooh, return on investment. I love that. Thank you for that clarification, Steve. Jeff, what's your timeline on this?
Well, sooner the better, because obviously these will be up for consideration here as they would start to consider their budget. So I'm looking to see if there's a consensus.
Joe, I saw your hand.
Well, yeah, I want to support Steve Gilmore's comments and Councilwoman Kathy, because I think that education is power, and the more educated the populace is about how to do recycling, how to utilize their trash, whatever, that is going to pay dividends. And I like the fact that this position is self-funded from tipping fees, so it's kind of a closed system. So, you know, I trust that the solid waste staff knows where to put their limited resources, and, you know, so I back this decision.
Jeff, do you need a motion for us to move forward with a letter?
I think maybe it would be wise.
I'm thinking that too at this point. Do we have any further discussion about potentially sending a letter to the Board of County Commissioners? Yes, Ed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, what was his name? The guy that talked after Joan.
Steve?
Steve, yeah, no, I appreciate his insight on, you know, return on investment. I can certainly identify with that. I think we need to make practical decisions here, not ideological ones. And, but, you know, because of that, it does make more sense to support the letter. So I will be supporting it for that reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to direct the chair to pen a letter to the Board of County Commissioners recommending these positions to them in their budget process?
I would make a motion to send a letter for these employees.
Thank you, Elaine. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes, and Jeff, I'll work with you on a letter.
Sounds great. And that's it for me. I have some things I'll mail to you, but you're over time and I know
We
you-
are a little bit over time, and I'm supposed to be moderating a debate in a few minutes.
So thank you,
all
everybody.
for being here today. Once again, wonderful presentations, and to staff working on education and outreach, thank you so much for your work. Truly, it's how we change things. So thank you, and we'll see you in a month.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Having such great presentations.